All right, as I said at the top of the show, former President Trump joins me now to react to all this. And, sir, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Well, thank you, Rob.
So you've been ridiculed by the left for years now for calling investigations into you witch hunts. You specifically called the Russia collusion investigation a hoax. The Durham report vindicates you in a number of different ways. It destroys Russia collusion. It validates your firing of FBI Director James Comey. It validates your criticisms of late Senator John McCain, who pushed this dossier in Washington. It proves that you've been targeted by a very vicious machine.
Yeah. Well, that's been obvious to me for a long time. I fired Comey, and that was a very wise thing to do. I'm glad I fired him, and I fired him very early. And he wasn't my pick either. I inherited him, but
right.
we got rid of him, and it's a lucky thing I did. Otherwise, it would have been far worse. But I would tell you that it's a great vindication, and it feels good. And the report has been, wildly praised. I wish it could have come faster, but the detail that he went into, 308 pages, the detail is extraordinary. And all of these people, I guess you could call it treason. You could call it a lot of different things. But this should never be allowed to happen in our country again.
In a White House meeting, then CIA Director John Brennan briefed President Obama that Hillary Clinton had dreamed up a scheme to paint you as a Russian asset, as a distraction from her email disaster. Joe Biden, who's now the president, was at that briefing and has been lying about you for political gain ever since. If you get back into the White House, how do you disinfect a town as dirty as Washington, D.C.?
Well, there is a deep state, and there are a lot of problems, and I did a lot of firing, but it goes down very low when you look at it. This was really started by when she lost the election, which, according to some people, was was somewhat of a surprise. Okay, I didn't think it was a surprise because I'd go to rallies with like 55,000 people, and she'd have rallies that were not well attended at all. But they called this a big surprise, and they didn't know what to say. And they said, let's blame it on Russia. Somehow somebody came up with the idea, let's blame her loss on Russia. And when they blamed it on Russia, all of a sudden the fake news started picking it up, and it went longer and longer. And all of a sudden it was a week, and then 2 weeks, and then ended up going 2.5 years. They made the most of it, and it's a disgrace. But this was really an excuse for why she lost the election. She blamed it on Russia, and it's very sad, very, very bad for our country. Despite that, we did things that nobody thought were possible. The biggest tax cuts in history, rebuilt our military, biggest regulation cuts in history, Space Force. We did so much. By the way, strongest border ever, greatest economy ever. No inflation. We had the strongest border in the history of our country, and now you have the worst border in the history, maybe of the world, because I don't think anybody in the world has ever had a border like this. Yeah. It's a disaster. So despite this, we did so great. But it's, we had to fight our way through this.